Hey, welcome back to Taylor's Trick-Taking Table. I'm Trick, and today we're covering another solo trick-taking game because it is Solo October. And what's nice about this channel is I never have to do it alone. I always have the loving support of Taylor and Table. It's so sad. He thinks he's like funny. Could you go away, dude? I'm trying to talk to someone. Could you go away? No, you're the best. No, stop it. No, you. Oh, love those guys. But when they're not around, I've had to resort to solo gaming. And as you can see by the stack of solo games, that's fallen over just a few times while filming this. I'm no spring chicken to solo gaming. In fact, I kind of love solo games that are win-lose as opposed to high score. The interesting thing about the game we covered last week, Follow the Suit Solitaire, was it was both. But the one we're covering this week, which is Gongor Whist, it's by BD Magnus, is it uses the deck tet system. So that's one of the hooks, is the deck tet has cards with two suits on them. So when you're following suit, you can actually follow either of the two suits. Interesting concept. And the other one is that it's only win-loss, but you have to hit 8 bids in a row. So it's an extremely challenging game. Let's go to the digital table, because I'm going to go to a website that I think was designed by Kwame, who might watch the channel. So thanks, Kwame. Let's go to the digital table and I'll show you how to play. Gongor Whist is played with some of the deck tet deck that you can see here. The cards used are the 2 through 9 and the crown cards. The aces in the middle here are used for determining trump. As you can see, the cards usually have 2 different suits on them. There's 6 suits total, and the crowns, which are the tallest in the suits, all only have 1 suit on them. As an example of the double suit, this 5 over here is both sun and wave. So I'll first show you how to play Gongor Whist, and then afterward I'll show you my variant. To set up, you're going to shuffle 2 through 9 and the crowns into a deck, deal yourself 7 cards, and the dummy 7 face down cards into a stack. Then the aces are going to be shuffled, and the first one's turned up to determine trump at the very start of the game. In Gongor Whist, players are trying to play 8 hands in a row where they hit each of these 8 bids up here. So as you can see, 0 would be taking 0 tricks, all the way up to 7, where you'll take all the tricks in the hand. So you'll evaluate your hand, see trump, and then maybe make a bet. So maybe I think I'm going to make 5 tricks. In Gongor Whist, the dummy player will always lead to the trick. So you just flip up the top card of their stack here, and the lead would be any of the suits on the card. Sometimes there's only 1 suit, but most of the time it'll be 2 suits. So now I can play from my hand any of the serpent green circle, so any of these cards or the 4, or I can play any wave, so like this 2 over here, or again, this 7. The crown is the highest card of that symbol, so if I play the crown here, I would win. So the card would just flip and say win. Depending on the trump, a card could have trump, like this 3 here would be of the trump suit. So if I played this 5 over here, that was green, and then kind of this beige circle, it would actually lose. Even though 5 is bigger than 3, the 3 has a trump symbol on it, so it's part of the trump suit right now. So maybe if I did want to win this trick, I'll play this 6. So now following suit, I could play this same wave 7, and since there's no trump on this card, I'll win that one. If I don't have either of the suits on the card, I can play whatever I want. So maybe I'll just play this 2. If it has both suits, again, you can just play and follow suit whatever you want. It's funny because some cards will have following suit on both of the symbols, like this 5 or this 4 here. So now I'm in a situation where I have to win the next 2 tricks to hit my bid. So what's funny is this tree suit usually wins everything. And since I have to play this 6, because this is the tree suit, I would lose. However, in this game, whenever it's your turn, right before you play a card, you can always do something called twiddling trump. And what that means is you can flip over the trump deck and change what the trump is. So in this situation, I really want it to be this beige circle suit, because even though the lead suit is this trees and I'd be following suit, I'd still win. And how this lines up nicely is, even though lead is moon and sun, the trump is this kind of triskel suit. So this 5, even though it's lower and it's off suit, it does have the trump suit, so I'll win that trick as well. If you hit your bid, you'll have won the first round. If you failed your bid, you'll have lost the game and have to start over. What's interesting in this game is after you hit a bid, it wipes it from the section, because you only have to hit each bid once. However, each 2 hands is kind of part of a set. So the deck and the trump deck don't reset after the first hand. They only reset after the second hand, and every grouping of 2 after that. If we won this hand, everything would reset on the 3rd hand, but after the third hand, it would stay the same for the fourth hand. So maybe I have a pretty good hand here. I think I'm going to win 4 tricks, so we'll kind of finish this hand super quick here. So after I hit my bid in round 2, I actually went through the deck all the way to the end. And if you ever play through the trump deck, it ends with no trump. So at the end here, I lost this trick, which I needed to do, because it was lead, sun, or this base circle, and I didn't have either of those. So even though the 8 is higher than the 7, I was offsuit with no trump, and I lost, which is great for me. So once you click OK, everything resets. So as you can see over here, when I click this, the trump deck is all reset. This whole deck here is shuffled, and I'm dealt a whole new set of 7, and the dummy has 7. But as you can see up here, since I hit the 4 and 5 bid, those are off the table. So now I'll try to pick one of these different bids. So again, the 3rd and the 5th and the 7th hand are all new. Everything's fresh like the trump deck. But the 2nd, the 4th, the 6th, and the 8th hand uses the same system where this stays in place and I have the other part of the deck for the 2nd hand. So the game would just play out. I try to hit the rest of these bids here. If I ever miss one, I lose. If I make all of them, I would win. Now I'm going to show you my scoring variant that I find super fun. The premise is you pick a number of hands that you want to play. So I generally say 5 for a normal game. You can go higher if you want a harder or longer game. Once you've picked a number of hands, like maybe 5, you'll put it into a random number generator, or you can just roll a die, and it would be minimum 5 to maximum 30, or the number of die you roll, you would just times by the number of hands. So if you roll a 3, you're going for a target of 15. But let's say the random number generator gave me 13. So once you have that number, once you have that 13, you can come back here. And now the goal of this game is in 5 hands, you have to successfully hit bids where the total value of all those hit bids is equal to 13. So they could be any combination. They could be, 6, 4, 1, 2, 0, or, 5. I can't do the math, but the idea is you can hit any number of bids and you can reuse the number as long as it's not right after each other, because there is a caveat where you can bid whatever you want, except you can't bid the same number twice. So for example, if I bid 4 and I hit 4, in the next hand, I'll have to bid something other than 4. But after the 2nd hand, if I did complete that bid, I would just refresh this page. I can bid 4 again. So there's still the hook of the first hand and the 2nd hand where the trump deck stays the same, but you have a little bit more leniency on what you can bid when you try to hit that target. If you ever fail a bid in those number of hands that you pick, so in this case 5, if I ever failed one of those 5 bids, I'd lose. If after all the bids, even if I correctly hit them, if the total didn't equal that random number, so if I hit 14 or 12 and I didn't hit 13, I would also lose. But if not, if you hit 5 bids in a row and you hit that number, you win. So that is Gongor Whist, and before we get into final thoughts, I just want to say thank you to PD Magnus, who chatted about my variant in the BGG forums, and also Guami, who created that website. But so, Gongor Whist. It is a very interesting game. I think it, so far, of what I've played in terms of solo trick takers, has probably the most similar feel to a multiplayer trick taker. It has the tactical nature, it has that bidding, and you really get a sense that you are playing a trick-taking game. It's still puzzly, because we've covered a few before that are a little bit more puzzly, but it has, I think, that tactical nature of a trick-taker kind of shining through. So I do think if you're looking for a solo trick-taker that feels way more like a trick-taker than a puzzle, this is probably more of that kind of side of the coin. We've talked before about the different ways that trick-taking games have following suit, so maybe you don't have to follow it all, like in Stickdown, all the way to more classic examples where you do have to follow the lead suit. What's interesting about this game is it has that traditional feel where you do have to follow the lead suit, but most of the cards have 2 suits. It's a cool way to give players flexibility on what they can play, broaden those options, but still have that same classic feel of needing to follow suit. It was cool to use the system too, especially with that trump deck that's changing around and controlling that deck and like twiddling trump. When you have 2 suited cards, that trump system really works nicely, especially if you're kind of sometimes trapped in this game, or if you have a really high card and you don't want to win with it, you can kind of work around that trump to maybe make, like a 9 for example. Make one of the suits in the 9 trump, or one of the suits super weak, and it's cool to be able to have that flexibility where even though the rank might be tough, to maybe try to sluff or try to win with one of those cards, you have the options in the suits and changing what's trump to make it either super weak or super strong, depending on what your bid is. I think that's what I love most in the card play, is there is so much flexibility. You can see your whole hand, you can see how many suits you're kind of working with, you have so much kind of maneuverability with that deck, that trump deck. And that flexibility is also nice to see with the twiddling of trump. It's cool to use that as a resource for the two hands. I like that it's split over two hands, and whether you want to manipulate the deck a lot at the first bid and then wait for the second bid to try to not, or try to pick an easier bid and not twiddle any trump so that your second hand is a little easier on you. It's cool to have that two-hand arc, especially in a whole game that's pretty much like a 8-hand arc, right? So it's cool to have every hand be a journey, and then every 2 hands be a journey, and then every 8 hands be a journey, unless you lose before those 8 hands, which happens so much. And I think that's probably my biggest critique of the game, is it's very hard. Winning 8 hands, especially those specific 8 bids, is extremely, extremely hard. It felt like playing a Nintendo hard platformer, like Ninja Gaiden, or like Super Meat Boy. I had a similar kind of Super Meat Boy feeling where it was just like, it was addictive to play, but it was just so hard. And maybe that's what you want. I found that it was a bit restricting sometimes, because the general premise is you have 8 hands, you have to hit all those 8 bids in a row, so you can't miss a bid, which is fine, it's cool. But what's tough is sometimes your hand is just better or worse for higher or lower bids, so you'll be whittling yourself down, you know, and the very last bid that you need to hit in this like 8-bid gauntlet just doesn't work for your hand, and it feels like, okay, well that's unfortunate, that's not fun. So what I realized was, oh, it's actually easier to hit the middle bids, at least for me. The trying to win every trick, trying to win no tricks was pretty tough, and then the one, try to win just one, try to win all 6 but not 7, was also pretty tough. So what I realized was the middle bids were easier for me. So it became a game where I was saving the middle bids for the latter hands. So like, you know, the 7th and 8th hand, this is kind of so confusing to explain, but the 7th and 8th hand, I would save the middle bids because I found I was playing the game and I was just losing a lot at the end where the bids were more crucial. Maybe I'll try to explain that a better way. So you have to make all 8 bids in a row, right? But I found that the 0 and the 7 bid and even the 1 and the 6 bid were harder than the middle bids. So what I realized was, so I didn't have to make a bunch of middle bids and then just lose it later on, I try to start with the harder bids. So I would get a hand at the very start and be like, okay, is this a 7 or a 0 hand? Because I didn't want to waste all that time and just like, to be playing a lot of middle hands, hitting them, and then just losing on the harder ones. So I was like, okay, I'll try to get the harder ones out of the way first. And I felt that was a little limiting, and I know that's just probably just the way I was playing it, but it felt like if you don't go for the harder bids first, you were just kind of leaving it up to luck to try to hit those harder bids later on, which just felt hard and not very fun. So I like the system a lot. I don't like the running the gauntlet system after I did it. It was pretty frustrating. Trying to hit 8 hands in a row. It just felt like, oh my gosh, this is just too much. It felt kind of just punishing and what's the word? Masochistic. That's the word. I think that's why I made the variant, is because a couple reasons. You have the flexibility on what you want to hit. So you can, you know, go bigger if you have a good hand. You can go smaller if you have a smaller hand. And you have the variable hand size. You don't have to go always 8. I felt like 8 was a lot. It took me a lot of tries to try to win that. And it's cool to maybe just try with 5 and have it ramp up equally with that random number. So I felt like my variant made for an overall nicer play session. I feel like you have to be really in the mood if you're going to try to get 8 hands in a row with those specific 8 bids. It's a cool concept though. I think if you really want a challenge and you are up to that puzzly nature, you maybe feel like you're a good trick taker, definitely try it. I did complete it once. Felt like a badge of honor. It almost felt as a rite of passage as someone who loves trick-taking games, to really prove my worth, to show that I was good at it. But it was a lot, and I don't ever want to do it again. So I don't know if it's a weird recommendation. Maybe it is, you know, like running a marathon or something where at the end of it, you're exhausted and you're not sure if you ever want to do it again, but it was fun. It was a good achievement. I know there's people who love running marathons, so that's maybe not a good example. Maybe you'll love running through the gauntlet too. But yeah, so I think if you really want to try it and see if you can handle that craziness, go for it. It's free, and the deck you can grab online. So definitely check it out. Maybe if you like flagellation more than the average person. So maybe that is you. Maybe you are someone who loves that punishing challenge and kind of like Ghost Stories or kind of like Regicide or something, where you want a harder game that's a tough nut to crack. And when you do crack it, you feel great. Kind of like Dark Souls or something like that. So definitely check it out if it sounds good to you. And also, you can just play my variant if you just want to play a couple hands of it, or just, play a couple hands of the regular game, and you don't have to do all 8. Just see how it feels, because I do feel like the gameplay system is really, really fun. Trying to hit that bid, using the trump and the 2 suited cards, it's fascinating. It has a lot to add to this kind of trick-taking design space that's fun to pick apart and kind of investigate. So thanks so much for watching.